Hello, welcome to a developer diary, and firstly, a big thank you to anyone who's backed Devastated Dreams. If you haven't, there should be a link below. Um, it's definitely tough and scary running another Kickstarter campaign, but I think we have the most amazing community at Infinitap, and you guys are awesome, so I think we can do it. But I'd like to talk about why I'm making Devastated Dreams, and I think it's an interesting question to ask because theoretically I could make, any game I wanted. I mean, that's the thing that's so amazing about game development is that anything is possible. You can create any sort of world or any genre or any blend. So I think it's important to talk about why you're drawn to a particular idea. And I think one of the things that has worked really well at Infinitap, with Neverending Nightmares, is to create games that are very personal to me. I think that's been helpful. I think it draws people to the game, and I think it also is helpful for me both on a personal level, for being able to express myself, but also for inspiration. It's tough to, I think, create something super duper special or interesting that doesn't really draw from yourself, from your own personal experience, because, and I mean, maybe that's not true, but I think, a lot of things that resonate with yourself can make your art more powerful. And I am sort of drawn to an example, and I can't quite remember the which movie it was, but I took a lot of film classes in college, and in one of them, I think they talked about Roman Polanski, who grew up, I think, in Poland during the Nazi occupation, and he remembered the Nazi soldiers, doing something particular where he was hiding, I think picking up something and just throwing it on the ground. And then later he was able to incorporate it into one of his movies. I want to say Macbeth, but I could be totally wrong. I don't even know. I should have looked it up beforehand. Maybe he didn't do a Macbeth. I thought he did a Macbeth. But anyway, just that idea that, it's sort of an interesting and haunting image, and even without the context, I think it's something special that he's sort of bringing to the table, and certainly with the context, it's like, whoa, that's really really deep, and there's so much emotion behind it. But I think that's something that is great about putting yourself into your work, is that you can really bring something special to the table. So, Devastated Dreams is very personal to me. My wife and I were expecting our first child. I mean, I assume you've watched the pitch video, but I mean, in the pitch video, everything's sort of cut down, and I try and say everything I could possibly say that's interesting about the game in less than 5 minutes. Well, that was my goal. It ended up being over 5 minutes, but I think through these developer diaries, I'm going to try and pick a bunch of different things about the game that I'd like to expand on, and then talk about them a lot. And so, I mean, obviously, I don't think as many people are going to watch these as the Kickstarter pitch video, but I think for people looking for extra information, these will be helpful, and it's also interesting. We got a lot of feedback for a Kickstarter pitch video. Some positive, some negative. But what was interesting to me is that we got some conflicting feedback. So some people said, like, the first 2.5 minutes, the first half, where I mostly talk about my personal experiences, was the most interesting, and then they were sort of less interested. Then other people said, like, oh, I don't care about the personal information, I just want to hear about the story. So I guess these sort of developer diaries I'm doing will give you some insight into whatever particular aspect of the game that appeals to you. And I think that's one of the things that I try to do with my games is create something that doesn't just have one selling point, one reason to play it, one thing that could be interesting about it, because I think then you're limited to people who just care about that particular aspect. So I mean, if you look at Neverending Nightmares, we wanted to do something more than just an exploration of mental illness. We wanted to create something really scary. We wanted to create something with a really unique art style. We wanted to create this cryptic puzzle sort of plot, and so I mean, there's different reasons why people will like Neverending Nightmares. Some people just like it because it's scary. Some people really like this sort of emotional content behind it. So with Devastated Dreams, we're trying to offer more story. We're trying to offer, some new gameplay experiences. But I mean, at least for me, I think the best thing about it is just the personal aspect. Pouring myself into the game, and my experiences, and certainly. In talking about it, again, in the pitch video, I talk about the difficulty of being an expectant father, and sort of the vulnerability there. But I think this has been something that's really resonated with me. And it's interesting because when I started, just in the planning stages, I don't think we seriously started really developing the game until maybe like December of last year. We did some patches and some fixes for Neverending Nightmares. There was a lot of work doing the updates, a lot of post-launch, updates, the Kickstarter rewards, the art book. I've said I think was something like 160 hours of work, or like a man-month or something like that. There was a lot of getting things printed up and everything. So I don't think the artists really moved over until December, and so during that time, I was sort of drawn to the idea of just that feeling when I was in the Philippines, and certainly. I wish I had pictures or video. I don't know if you guys have tried to take pictures or video at night, but they don't really turn out, and I don't have a good camera. I'm not good at taking pictures, and we were also in a moving vehicle, so someone suggested, like, oh, you really should show this experience that resonated with you. Well, I can't, because there was no way to capture it. I mean, other than making the actual game, or getting some sort of professional film crew out to the Philippines. Which, I mean, again, I think capturing the experience, the feeling of the experience through the game is more important to me personally. So I'm not gonna hire a film crew. Or whatever. I mean, certainly it would be fun, if we had like a huge sort of super stretch goal to, try and go aswang hunting in the Philippines or something like that. I think that would be really interesting. But, I mean, I think that would be a very, very distant stretch goal. I think, focusing on the core experience, and sort of adding to that, probably is a better a better way to go. But anyway, so I was stuck with this feeling, just looking at these huts, and I mean, I don't know if you would call it the jungle exactly. I mean, again, I didn't explore all of Philippines, and like I said, it was in Coron, and we were just getting a driving tour of the island, and it just so happened that the sun was setting, but I saw these huts, and it just I sort of imagined myself in it. These dark huts in the middle of this. I don't know if it was a proper jungle, but there were trees and brush. You could see it from the road, but it wasn't really like on a road. And I'm sure there were huts further back. It just seemed so vulnerable. And certainly in speaking to my wife about these style of huts, they don't really have a door lock. Certainly not you maybe can sort of bar the door when you're inside, but if you're outside, they don't have a key. You can't lock it, to prevent thieves or whatever. And I don't know, maybe they don't all have bars on the inside, and even if they did, the windows are essentially open because it's very hot in the Philippines. It's crazy hot. Oh my gosh, is it ever hot? And I'm not. Well, I guess it's not just the heat; it's just super humid and hot. So I'm not really a good person for dealing with the Filipino weather. But I think, one of the things they have is basically the windows are just open. There's no screens. There's no whatever. They do have a lot of mosquito netting, which is something we wanted to show in the game, but we couldn't think of a way to render mosquito netting in our art style. Because, mosquito netting is a very sort of thick mesh, so I imagine it would just be sort of a gray overlay, but a gray overlay would just make the game look worse. So anyway, but that's sort of your protection from the outside is a mosquito net, and so that really stuck with me. But and of course I was fascinated by stories of aswang that I heard from friends and family, and I'll talk more about that later in another video. But once my wife and I conceived our child, everything sort of took a new shape, and everything. It was scary because we were very invested, in our child. Certainly, we're nearing the end, so that's good. But at the beginning, there were a number of scares, and we read everything on the internet, and I've read a bunch of books, and but the thing is, right, like at the beginning, if you lose your pregnancy, then you lose your pregnancy, and just that helplessness of not being able to do anything. I'm very proactive. Certainly I worry a lot, and so because of my worries, I come up with plans and strategies and things to do. But with the pregnancy, it was just sort of wait and hope. Sometimes they're viable, sometimes they aren't. And, there's supposed to be a good reason if they're not viable. If your body rejects it or whatever, then, probably that baby couldn't have survived. But, and certainly that's what the doctors told us. But, that doesn't make me feel better at all. And I think just that feeling, that sort of, trying to come up with the right word, but just it's so hard to grasp that something you care about is just taken from you for no reason. And so obviously I'm not an expert in Filipino folklore. Obviously I'm interested in it, I've been studying it, but I feel like that the legends of the aswang are sort of evolved from that sort of frustration, that lack of understanding, to give meaning to it all. Your unborn child was taken for you because of this villain, not because of chance or luck. And obviously, maybe that's not where the folklore came from, but that's certainly what the folklore means to me, and certainly that's the meaning it gained sort of as we are expecting our first child. So that's a big theme with the the swung and why this game is so important to me. So it's kind of interesting because, I started with, thinking about it in one way, and then it gained a whole extra meaning, as my life changed. And so by putting that into the game, I think it's become a much stronger game, and definitely that's something that I want to explore more. Is the idea of pregnancy and the connection between mother and child, which right now, if you don't read the pitch videos or watch the pitch videos or read the pages or read what I've said about the game, you could just say, oh, the main character is overweight, and there's no difference in the game as played presently, and that's definitely something we want to change. I guess we sort of have that moment at the end where she's like, in this nightmare, I'm surprised there's no belly, but that's something we want to do more and develop more, and certainly because the game is early in development, we haven't gotten a chance to add all that, but I think we want to create something very emotional and very horrifying, and I think if we're able to develop that connection, it will only make the game more horrifying. Because in Thomas Grip, the creative director of Amnesia and Frictional, he talks about like a fate worse than death, and that's sort of the pinnacle of horror design. And I think if we can, create that connection between the mother and child, then having the child be eaten by these horrible creatures, I think that's a fate worse than death. I think that can be a hard thing, and it's interesting because death in video games is just sort of like, oh ho hum, Mario lost a life, his counter's going down, but the idea of losing something important to you, I think that is something we can hopefully make very powerful. Anyway, those are just some of my musings on why we're making Devastated Dreams and why it's important to me. So thank you for your support, and I look forward to working on this game with you.